Right, we're joined by an old friend of the program, the one and only cricket commentator and writer Chetan Narula, who will be joining us for the ODI series in India in a couple of days or weeks' time. Chet's great to see you again, mate. India have named their squad finally, belatedly, for the Champions Trophy, and there's lots of interest in that squad, but there are lots of other things of interest in Indian cricket, as there always are. But your thoughts on the squad? Jasprit Bumrah obviously is included, subject to fitness. Kuldeep Yadav also back. What are the other news lines that struck you?
First of all, it's great to be back on the show and great to be back on the team with you guys. Looking forward to the ODI series. And of course, the third ODI will be the one to watch out for. Jasprit Bumrah is in line for a return after, being advised rest for 5 weeks to just offload from bowling. So that'll be the one to watch out for if he comes back, if he bowls his 10 overs, then India will be in great shape for the Champions Trophy. So I think that's the biggest talking point, Neil, from India's Champions Trophy squad because India have only picked three full-time pacers in Bumrah, Mohammad Shami, Arshdeep Singh. So Hardik Pandya expected to share bowling responsibility. So that's the big talking point. You have four spinners and three pacers and one, pace all-rounder. So a bit spin heavy on their attack. The Champions Trophy matches will begin at 1 p.m. UAE time, and you can expect them to go on till 8:45, 9 p.m. UAE time. So you're expecting that last hour to be affected by a dew, if at all. So that could be one of the reasons why they've gone with the four spinners, as also the fact that post the ILT20, the pitches might be a little on the slower side, and that's where your spinners come into play. So the squad is pretty much on the expected lines. Some of the talking points, of course, Shubman Gill, Yashasvi Jaiswal. Who do you pick as the opening partner for Rohit Sharma? Then the keeper option, KL Rahul or Rishabh Pant. If you pick Shubman Gill and KL Rahul, then the entire top five, top six until Hardik Pandya is right-handers. So you need to bring in maybe a left-hander angle there to get Rishabh Pant in there or Yashasvi Jaiswal. But the interesting point is now Shubman Gill is vice captain. Do you drop the vice captain and bring in Yashasvi Jaiswal? So yeah, a lot of permutations and combinations possible. How they want to balance the bowling attack. Do they go in with Akshar Patel and Jadeja in the playing 11 together, as they did in the West Indies in a couple of games? Or do you have Washington Sundar, one of the two left arm spinners, and Kuldeep Yadav, along with two pacers? So it's going to be interesting how India line up in terms of their playing 11 in the Champions Trophy.
Yeah, Jane, I looked at that squad and thought we've got a lot of players very similar to each other, and not
Yes.
not some. We've got like sort of four or five players who sort of cover the same role. You mentioned the four spinners. The glaring omission for me, I thought, with Siraj, not having
Yeah.
Siraj in, especially like you said, you've explained it brilliantly that India are playing in Dubai. They are playing on pitches which are possibly going to be a bit tired after a franchise tournament. But I thought the timings of it, the dew factor and everything might suit more seam dominant than spin dominant. Was Siraj a big surprise in India? And you mentioned the Shubman Gill vice captain. Well, you've just dropped your captain from a test match in Australia, so anything's possible.
Well, I mean, he dropped himself in the Sydney Test match, Rohit Sharma. I'm sure he's not going to the Champions Trophy to drop himself again, is he? That would be, I mean, is he going to be the non-playing captain for India? No. Look, Rohit Sharma will play. And I think with the vice captaincy tag, it just goes to show that India are telling Shubman Gill that, okay, maybe Australia was not good enough. Maybe the past 4-5 months haven't been really good enough. There's been a lot of chatter about Shubman Gill's returns. I mean, there's no doubt he's a fantastic player. I mean, there's a lot in there, a lot of promise in there, and a lot of expectations obviously come along with promise, with the sudden rise that Shubman Gill had initially in his career. So now you look at him as somebody in the future who's going to deliver across formats for India. So I think this tells Shubman Gill, it's a message to Shubman Gill that, look, we are invested firmly in you. And yes, Yashasvi Jaiswal, you can't really stop him. You can't really count him out. Eventually, he is going to be Shubman Gill's partner in ODI cricket once Rohit Sharma steps away. Um, but Yashasvi Jaiswal might have to wait his turn to open for India in Champions Trophy. Gill and Rohit Sharma, with this move, I think it's pretty much nailed on. Um, in terms of the bowling, yes, there has been a bit of debate about Mohammad Siraj. He's been India's most successful pacer in recent times in 40 odd matches, 70 odd wickets. Uh, he loves bowling in terms of with the new ball. I think Rohit Sharma explained it in the press conference that with Arshdeep Singh, they're looking at balancing it out in terms of the new ball and the later on in the innings. Uh, Siraj did well in the ODI World Cup, I think, in parts, in patches. Uh, he started strongly, trailed off a bit. I think India missed a trick by not giving him the new ball in the final because Mohammad Shami struggled with the new ball on that particular day, and Mohammad Shami had been coming first change. Um, it's a big talking point here because Harshit Rana has been named replacement for Jasprit Bumrah for the England ODI series. So there's the question mark. If Bumrah doesn't make, fingers crossed, first of all, you hope Bumrah makes it because otherwise the entire Indian team takes a completely different look altogether. But if Bumrah doesn't make it, then are you taking Harshit Rana to the Champions Trophy? Because then it would be really lightweight on experience. Recently, I was doing commentary on the domestic games where Mohammad Shami was playing. And while he is fit, he's not really looking the Mohammad Shami that we know of. He's not looking like he's in rhythm. He's not bowling at full tilt, which is why it's an interesting selection that he's been picked in the T20 squad to face England. He'll be trying to bowl at full tilt, trying to gain that rhythm. That's very vital going into the Champions Trophy. So yeah, it's interesting times. I think Mohammad Siraj is just a little unlucky to miss out, given his returns in ODI cricket. It'll be interesting to see what happens with Jasprit Bumrah's fitness.
Chetan, we can talk about the squad and on-field matters for hours, and we will do in a few days' time. But before we run out of time, I'm absolutely fixated on Gautam Gambhir and his. I mean, he's a my way or highway guy. He's a disciplinarian. I just mentioned to Harmy in the intro that Brendan McCullum today at his press conference praised him as a strong leader of men, and I'm absolutely fascinated by whether he's a little too strong and a little too much of a disciplinarian, and I'm fascinated by this 10-point plan. I don't know how much truth there is in it, but the diktat from the BCCI that squads in future will all travel together on the coach, on the bus, and that they won't be able to have players, wives and girlfriends or families on tour the whole time with them as they were during the Border Gavaskar Trophy. I mean, I'm old enough to remember when, it was only wives, no girlfriends, and they were allowed a short window on tour. I even remember the days when they were banned. Is this going to work? It seems to be a bit retrogressive, a little bit of a step backwards. Or did the players go too far?
Well, I wouldn't say the players went too far because the restrictions were relaxed because of the COVID times, the pandemic times, because they were all staying in a bubble and they were traveling from one series to another. So they were not really seeing their families, and that was why the restrictions were relaxed by the BCCI, so that they could have the families in the bubble and they could meet them and see them and be with them during the pandemic times. Because this is it's not really going back too far. In 2018, I was covering the England series. India were playing in England, and India played in Australia, etc. And on. So these restrictions were in place even in 2018, and the players had no issues at that time. So they all went in a coach or the team bus. The players' families were there for 2 weeks or 2.5 weeks on the England tour, which was a lengthy tour, almost 2.5 months. So these restrictions aren't really that regressive, I would say. This has been the norm in Indian cricket. Not too late, just past the pandemic. So I think it's not something that you would say that would cause the entire team structure to be really upset about. I think it's pretty standard, it's pretty normal. As about your remark about Gautam Gambhir being a very strict disciplinarian and all, I think it's his personality that really comes off in that sense, that you expect him to be a little hard-headed, that my way or the highway kind of guy. But I think he's open to opinions. From what I've heard, from what I've gathered, you know, pre-match, he is obviously very opinionated, but once the team goes onto the ground, he leaves it to the captain to, run how he sees fit in terms of decision making, in terms of bowling changes or batting lineup, etc., etc. And I think that is the role of the coach. I would go on to say this, that I think he's come as the coach in a very tough time for Indian cricket. First of all, it's been tough assignments. Of course, accentuated by the fact that you lost 3-0 at home to New Zealand. Otherwise, it's been tough assignments. You look at the Border Gavaskar Trophy, the Champions Trophy, England series coming up. Then there's the T20 World Cup at home. Then you're immediately building up to the ODI World Cup in South Africa. It's a tough time to be an Indian coach. He's come on in, but again, accentuated by the fact that 3-0 loss at home, and then also the fact that there's a transition coming. And last time I was on the show, I had given an inkling that if the poor form continues into the Border Gavaskar Trophy, etc., we are on the cusp of a transition. I think with the Border Gavaskar Trophy, we have taken 2-3 steps forward towards that transition. This Champions Trophy could be the end of an era in ODI cricket as well for India. India, when they play the next ODI, will be thinking, can Rohit Sharma go to the 27 World Cup? Can Virat Kohli go to the 27 World Cup? Ravindra Jadeja, Mohammad Shami, how is Bumrah's fitness holding up, etc., and so on. So it's not easy for a coach when he's in charge of a transition, when he has superstar players who are used to running the dressing room the way they like. So it's been a little unfair, the kind of we have the rhetoric against Gautam Gambhir, etc. But I think we need to give him a little bit more time, maybe another few months, and see where this Champions Trophy goes, where the England series goes, what kind of changes we make in terms of team personnel and all, and then kind of judge his coaching stint. Let him get the transition started out, and then see the results as they come in. Look at the T20 side. I mean, the transition is already there. We'll see them in action against England. They have been doing really well, whether at home, they went to South Africa, they did really well. Likes of Sanju Samson, Tilak Varma, Surya Kumar Yadav as the skipper. It's coming on really well. So let's see what happens. I think it's a little too early. It's been tough for the new coach. But yeah, I think the disciplinary actions, etc., it's time to go back to the pre-pandemic, rules, etc. That's how I see it.
Yeah, and you probably just answered the question I was gonna ask, but
okay.
I mean, with all that losing to New Zealand, you mentioned all them players who are coming to the transition, the discipline stuff, which I think grabbed a hell of a lot of headlines. Rohit Sharma's leaving himself out, losing Border Gavaskar, losing New Zealand, and then probably losing if they go and lose the T20s to England, when you're saying there's a little bit of transition. The transition around the corner is in Rohit Sharma, probably Virat Kohli, and one or two others not coming. Is Gambhir the man that gets the transition, or does he get culled as well? Because it's not been great from India's point of view. And if England go beat them in the T20s, and they don't sort of, with what happened with the ICC and making sure that they didn't go to Pakistan and they had to play in Dubai, if India don't get to the semi-finals, or Lord forbid, don't get to the final after sort of kicking up the stink and making sure the final will be in Dubai, all of a sudden, is it Gambhir that gets culled as well? Or is it he gets he gets to get rid of Kohli, he gets rid of Sharma, he gets rid of all the more experienced ones and says, this is my group now, and I'm going to take them on beyond 2027 ICC 50 over World Cup?
I think it's a tough one to answer, really. How do you see the last few series, the results from there? Obviously, they haven't been great. You lost in Sri Lanka, you lost at home to New Zealand, you lost the BGT. If you lose at home to England in the ODIs or the T20s, or you don't, I think the minimum for Champions Trophy, any ICC trophy for India, is to get to the semis. After you get to the knockouts, anything can happen on the day, as you would know, Hami. I mean, having played cricket at the highest level, anything can happen on the day, right? So, but the minimum for India is that they get to the semi-finals of a Champions Trophy. If they get to the semis, I'm still okay with it. But again, it's a very, very tough call. Would the BCCI say, okay, look, we need to give him more time. We need to usher in the transition. We need to get rid of the superstar players. Like I said, after the Champions Trophy, when you play your next ODI or you play your next T20, you're headlong building to the 2016 T20 World Cup. The process has kind of already started for that. But when India does play its next ODI, they have to answer the question, do they see those superstars going to the next ODI World Cup in South Africa? And that's where I think the big decision needs to be made. How the results have been. Who do we put in charge? Because even if you change the coach, Harmy, you need to give him long enough rope to build to that tournament. You cannot bring somebody in and say, oh, you have 6 months, win us the tournament. It has to be a gradual process.
Chetan, some would argue some of them superstars come to England in the test matches.
You see Rohit Sharma coming to England for the test series?
That's
you see Virat Kohli coming? Virat Kohli coming?
That's a massive question from the outside looking in. Virat doesn't. I would always bring Virat Kohli to a big series. In my terms, you mentioned my time in playing and the highest level. I would never have gone to Australia without Kevin Peterson. So I would never have gone to England without Virat Kohli.
Yeah.
But alarm bells when your captain's dropping himself for the 5th Test match to work out. Right. Not only is he coming to England, but if he doesn't come, then who captains?
Well, the England Test series is a very, very far away marker at this point. Test cricket is a far away marker. If we start talking about that, we're going to be here all night. Let me warn you in advance.
I'm just talking about hierarchy and picking teams and making sure that
that's why I said.
If you keep losing, you lose a first against England bilateral series. You lose a first against England in the bilateral one-day series. All of a sudden, if Rohit Sharma's still in charge and still involved, then for me that puts even more pressure on Gautam Gambhir.
Look, in terms of the T20 series, Rohit Sharma is no longer
involved. No, he's not, but he's retired.
And this unit will be working with Gautam Gambhir. They did not work with Gautam Gambhir in South Africa, where we had a different support staff, and Gautam Gambhir was with the Indian team going to Australia. But they have done well. I see no reason why India can't do well in the coming T20 series. They will be playing at home. Pitches will be flat. You'll be scoring plenty of runs. I think India have the firepower and the bowling attack to beat England at home in a bilateral T20 series. But for me, again, the marker is the Champions Trophy. Irrespective of the result of Champions Trophy, whether India wins it or not, there is going to be a pause, there is going to be a breather, and you are going to be deciding the way forward. Even if you want to replace Gautam Gambhir, if the results don't go your way, that has to be the point, because you want to give the new coach at least 1.5, 2 years to build towards the ODI World Cup, at least a year or 9 months to build towards the 2016 T20 World Cup. So Champions Trophy, after that, depending on the results, you take a breather, you take a pause, and you make these vital decisions. And I think with everything that's been happening, given the long rope to Rohit Sharma, given the long rope to some of the superstars, I think the BCCI is building up towards that big moment where they will make those decisions.